Hello, in this video we're going to study noses, ears, eyes and mouths to help you get an idea of how to build up, how to make those particular face parts. So first I'm going to just show you the assumption side because I want to get you guys out of the habit of drawing from your memory without any proper reference. Now it's going to be easier for me because I've drawn a few mouths in the past, but generally when people draw mouths without reference they may just do something fairly simple like this, or a smile, something like that, and some lips, something like this. Very simplified, iconized type approach that it's oversimplified and there's not a lot of believability to it. Now let's do the same for a nose. So there's a side-on nose, and the front profile nose, oops, that didn't go so well, often looks a little like this, and maybe a three-quarter nose, they might have something like that. Okay, and same for eyes, we tend to have a lot of the key things in there, and something like this. So they work great as placeholder icons, but they don't necessarily say these are really artistic or anything like that. And often you get a lot of idealism in these kind of drawings where they work but they don't necessarily look amazing. And ears, a lot of people kind of struggle with ears because it's really hard to remember what an ear looks like, and often they're drawn a little like that. So some of the main things that beginner drawers will struggle with is drawing anything that's not front on or directly side on. For example, like drawing a head side on, they might do something like there's the nose and draw the eye way up here, and the eyebrow and the mouth, and the ear way back here somewhere. And that's all very fine. Again, it's iconized, it's very idealized, and there's not a lot of much else going on. But if we just take that and sort of break it down a bit into something a bit more appealing, you would move the nose round here. So this is be the center of the head. That way we see both eyes, right? But remember, the bridge of the nose is going to cover this eye a little bit because it sticks out further, and the other eye here. You'll notice that I'm using a little bit of line weight as well. A lot of my pencil work is softer. And then I'm going to like think about where the cheekbone is, because that leads to that little lump of the ear. And then because we're more side on, the ear's going to be a bit more elliptical. Okay, and then you got the earlobe there, and a few bits like that. So the more you draw ears, the more you get used to these sort of things. And the top of the ears round about where the eyebrow is, or the top of the eye, depends on the person. And the bottom of the ear round about where the nose ends. And just going to do a little nostril there. And now we've got a bit of form here before the chin. And the upper lip, I'm just going to put in shadow, and a little bit of shadow under there. And the bottom of the ear actually leads to the jaw bone like that, and we can bring that round to the chin and just go past, because remember we're looking at this sort of three-quarter view, so we see a bit of the other side of the head. And remember the form that these make, because we're seeing a bit more of a side-on profile, we start to see a lot more things going on there. And remember, a good bit of forehead, because the eyes should land round about the middle of the head, so there's a lot more going on up here, especially with the volume of hair and things like that. There's going to be, a little bit more happening in terms of shape up there. Okay, so that's going to be a much more believable eye. You've also got a bit of the eyelid, and the fact that the eyes, you don't see the full circle the way that the eyes have been idealized here. You don't often see that. You often see just a part, and you can sort of shade those in a bit. And to avoid dead looking eyes, just make sure you keep a highlight area, that area where the light reflects off the eyes, and just shade between the eyes and the eyebrow. If you shade those a little bit, that will just help to push them back, similar to under the nose, similar to the top lip and below the bottom lip. And you can put a little bit of a labial fold there, the nasal labial fold, which is the kind of fatty bit between the nose as it goes towards the, I guess, between the jaw and the chin area. And you got the jawbone here, and there's usually a little bit of a dip there. Okay, so that is how you would draw a head and think about those things, but it's good to get practicing with these, the mouths, the noses, and the eyes and ears, and make them not look like these. These are iconized versions. They're kind of like what you see when you go to your first elementary school or primary school. Then you've got your ABC, and there'll be a really simple drawing of like an apple, a banana or something. And you know, I can barely draw a banana, but there'll be a banana and there might be a carrot, right? And they're very simplified to help you identify these letters really easily, but these stick in your memory for a long time, and it's trying to get out of that habit and start to see things in a more three-dimensional as opposed to this iconized approach. So we're going to get some references. Let's just jump online somewhere and see what we can find. So I'll jump to, let me just close all these tabs apart from that one, and it's going to do a nose reference. Right, let's make sure we don't get any drawings done before. We don't want to copy a drawing, we want to be able to analyze a picture. So I'll just do images, make sure I get some nice noses. This one will do. So I'm going to bring that up and just move it across a bit, and I'll just get a new layer, and we're just going to look at these noses, how they are kind of formed. So you can see there's it goes back the way and then round and back the way. The middle profile is here, so you can analyze that. So it's kind of like you made a slice down the middle, so it's good to analyze that because you see the distance that it has to travel before it reaches the sort of plane of the face there, right? Same here. And you see, you don't see as much of that side. But look at the shapes that things make. You've got that nostril being like this, but this one back there, you know, they're getting more flattened as they go wrapping round a different angle, right? It's not because there's different sized nostrils, like it's because of the angle. Okay, and we trace that down and follow that back. You can see it's got all the way back there, but you don't have to really draw that. These are just ways of analysing it. You've got this round bit here, there it is there. And finding that middle line is kind of key. It's really key to analysing the shape. And there's the midline there, perfectly side on. And I'm going to trace that round and down like that. Just think about the shape in terms of the planes. Like most of this is facing down, and most of this here is facing out, and most of that is a side view that way, and most of that is a side view this way, and then it starts to go towards the head. So you can break these things down in your mind like that, just to think about how to simplify the shape. Again, it's different from iconizing. Iconizing is more of a kind of thing you'd do if you're making a user interface or some kind of symbology for something, but you break these down into simple planes, almost like a low poly 3D model, and then it just helps to see what's happening there. Okay, so I will now take that away, get another layer, and now draw with that in mind. So the midline, I can see there's a slight angle that way, so the midline is important, right? And then I'm going to work in this bottom plane of the base of the nose, so it's kind of a shape like that. So you can see I'm analysing this and the down part like that. That's kind of what I've drawn. It gives me a good idea of where things are going to go. It doesn't have to be super perfect, but that's good enough. And again, if you work very light, these are going to be guidelines. They're not going to be final, but they will help for when it comes to putting in the final things. So there's a nostril, especially the top of it, like the darker bit. That's the bit I kind of want to put down as a mark. Because if I just do this, the circle, the line weight that I've put here is way too heavy, and I won't be able to define this nice light coming in here. So the only bit that's the darkest is what you want to kind of jot down, and any clues to the shape, especially at this point. So I'll move on to this one. Again, kind of the midline here. I've drawn the sideline first just because it's already quite a nice S sort of shape and it's easy to read. Now I want to do that midline, and then I'll analyse that base shape so we see more of the left area and then a little less of the right area. We've got that part there, that nostril, and we see this one's kind of squashed like that. That's already feeling a little bit 3D. Side one is really easy, but look how perked up the nose is. It would be really easy to just draw the nose like that and call it done, but that's not really analysing this at all. We have to be nice and soft and keep checking the reference. So every time I move my mouse up to, sorry, I move my pen up to this picture is how often I'm looking at that. Right, I'll actually move it up so you can see how often I observe. So I do observe quite a lot, and I'm kind of going to where I'm looking as well. Right, and I'm probably looking a little bit more than I'm showing you guys. Right, but that's going to be good enough for that one. You can also do a little bit of the cheek coming in there, just to show a bit of surface. Now this one, we see most of the bottom. Look at that shape there. It's like a triangle with rounded ends. You can look at it like that, but definitely don't draw it as heavy as this. But that's the shape. You know, instead of just tracing something, it's good to get used to analysing. It's a little bit like colour picking from a photo. You don't always want to do that. It's good to be able to try and create that colour that you see. Okay, so do that, and then we got the midline through there, and it's very short. See, this distance is very short, even though the nose is that length. Because of the angle, we got foreshortening happening because this direction is more in line with our eyes, our eye level. Okay, so as you rotate like a cylinder, so it's flat on a table, and the other end of the cylinder's way behind it, it's going to look like that. But if you prop the cylinder up, it's going to look a little bit more like that if this was your eye level here. Right, and you might even have a little bit of perspective like that, but you still get the shortening, which I've shown you in the previous series of videos. So the main task to do in these videos, this episode rather, is to get some good photographs of ears, eyes and noses, and draw as many as you can, and spend a good hour or two drawing different noses, an hour or two drawing different ears, and see what you can get from that. Now this one is more kind of straight down like that, but we see that's the side profile of the front nose area, but nothing to do with the little nasal flange there. And there's a little kind of shadow here because there's a little extra bit of harder material in the skin. And remember that the skeleton, the skull, actually has bone to around about this part, and a lot of this is cartilage and extra thicker stuff. So that is going to do that one. So then we go back and then we look at the line weight and we look for the darkest areas, right? We just look at the darkest parts, and that is all you want to draw is the darkest bits, and then later we'll do a little bit of shading. So this is going to be the line weight pass. So we just pick out the darkest bits, but we don't make them as dark as we can. We're just making them darker than the guide and making a few little corrections to any shapes. Tiny bit of shading here and there kind of helps. But you see, I'm just picking out the darkest bits. A bit there, around there. This, we see the nostril in a more side-on view, so it's looking flat like that. Maybe do a little bit of nose like this. The darkest bit here is this part of the nostril. That's just that bit there. And I just fading that line out, and I'll do this bit a little bit darker, and then the next darkest bit is round about here. It kind of connects up there. Right. You can do a little bit of idealizing as you go to make it kind of look nice. Doesn't have to be super accurate. No one's going to judge you for practice work like this. And it doesn't matter if what I'm doing is not perfect. It's really just giving you the guide. And it's not every day I have to draw noses. I'm often drawing very different things. But you can see I've kind of opted to draw the darkest things first, and then I can leave the rest. And then the darkest thing here is kind of this part, and a little bit of the dip. Now I can go back and I make my brush a little bigger. In this case, you might tilt your pencil on the side and start to shade in the next darkest areas, and even darken some bits that you feel could have been slightly darker. But it's all just shading now. And leave a lot of the area white for the paper to do the highlight work. You don't have to draw every single thing, and you don't have to draw all the outlines. You're just given just enough information for the brain to recognize what this is, and that's often good enough for any artwork that you're creating. I usually try to shade the direction of things, like in this case I'm trying to kind of mimic the volume of this part, the sort of three-dimensionality of it. Okay, it doesn't have to be perfect. This is just an exercise. Even for me, this is a little bit of an exercise. I don't draw noses every day, nor do I have to, but getting used to the pencil is really important, like controlling the pressure. So the more you do these practices, the better you're going to get with that, and you get better at shading and seeing the shades as well, or you look at references and observe. Okay, so I'm just drawing the darkest bits. Okay, I don't have to draw in every single bit. It looks like a nose enough. And that's good enough like that. So one way you could mess this up, if you have been following along with this or you're doing your own studies, you could mess this up by doing something like this where you're trying to show the full nose in an outline format. You might be like, I want to see this side of the nose. You know, your brain will be fighting with you a bit to see everything, so that because your assumption is like, if you don't draw all the lines, people aren't going to recognize what it is. But in the context of what you're creating, if you do a whole face and you just have this in the right place, people expect it to be a nose, and you've just drawn a few lines, like the darker lines and things, that's perfectly fine. It's going to pass as a nose. You don't have to draw in every line, because now you're kind of guessing at things because it's not actually there. The light is making it sort of vanish and blend in with everything else. So you're going to guess at things, and that's going to break it a bit, right? So you only want to draw just enough information, and definitely the darker areas first, and you're just drawing what you see, even if it doesn't make much sense. Like, you might be like, I want both nostrils to look the same. That wouldn't make sense at all if they're at an angle. There's no way that nostril is going to look like that at this angle, but you can see as we look closer and more front on, then it does become more idealized, but it's definitely not looking like this. It's definitely not looking like that, or this, or anything oversimplified. So definitely avoid this sort of thing when you're doing these studies. So the next task is to do mouth and eyes and ears, which will be very shortly. Thanks for watching. Bye.